All right, great to have you. Welcome. It's the Joe Pag Show. Great radio stations across the land, iHeartRadio, Newsmax TV as well on a Monday. And it's another Monday where we come to work and we're talking about terrorism. We're talking about bad people attacking good people, and then you've got a bunch of idiots on one side of the aisle who can't get away from each other, can't get out of their own way to get to a microphone and get to a camera to say what this isn't and what this doesn't look like, and there are no signs of this being terrorism. And although generically speaking it's terrorism, but it's not international terrorism, so we should all feel better about it somehow. Unfortunately, well, a couple of things. Fortunately, because I love talking to him, we've got Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott on the line. Unfortunately, the reasons why we talk, Jeff, at some point we just got to go bowling or something, because, I mean, the only time we ever seem to hook up is when there's something going on. How are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. You're right.
Yeah, here we are again, and, it's horrible that we've got this happening in the streets of New York, in the streets of New Jersey, in a mall in Minnesota, and the first reaction we get from these idiots that we're supposed to look at as leaders is nothing to see here, don't make any assumptions, ignore the name of the assailant, don't it's radicalized, but ISIS and ISIL have nothing to do with it. I mean, it's almost like a game they're playing with us now, these so-called leaders. Wouldn't it be best if we actually reacted and said, damn it, they got us again, let's go get them?
Yes, I mean, people are looking for that refreshing breath of reality, and we're just not seeing it. It's another confirmation that the Obama administration has got their head in the sand. I listened carefully to the president in New York. He wouldn't say the word radical Islam. It's violent extremism. You know, that's a tactic, and you can't make war against a tactic. The common thread is radical Islam, and everybody knows it, except apparently for our current administration and other people that are in a state of denial.
The name of the book is Radical Islam Why? Radical Islam Why? And it's Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott. You're right. I mean, you had de Blasio who said, don't make any assumptions. We don't know anything. Does not look like terrorism. Now, Jeff, you and I know what the Boston bombers used. And last night, you had a pressure cooker that did blow up, one that didn't, luckily. I guess they just thought somebody was throwing pressure cookers away. How can you not immediately say, this has all the signs of domestic terrorism? That should be, the first thing out of his mouth should have been that, no?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he said, I don't know anything is about the truest statement he's ever made.
Yeah,
he doesn't know anything.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when he said that it was an intentional act and you have an explosion, well, 1 + 1 = 2. Therefore, it is an act of terrorism.
Right.
The real question is, you could say, well, we don't know who the person or persons that did this act of terrorism. Is it a left-wing extremist? Is it a radical Islamic extremist? We just don't know yet. But to deny it's even an act of terrorism is just a disorientation to reality.
Radical Islam Why? It's Jeffrey Addicott, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, Professor Addicott, of course, the director for the Center for Terrorism Law at St. Mary's University. And then Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, comes out and says, it looks like it could be terrorism. A bomb goes off in New York. It's a terrorist attack, but does not look like it's international terrorism. Well, Jeff, what does that tell me? I mean, the 29 injured aren't as hurt? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, he's the good news in his mind is that, well, it's not directed by ISIS over there. There are people that are inspired by ISIS here. And that is some good news, I guess, if you can articulate it correctly, because the jihadists that are here amongst us that are not sent by ISIS from Syria and Iraq to come over here, they're not that sophisticated, as we said before. I mean, I know when the attack first occurred, I saw some news commentators say, well, why would you put a bomb on this street? It should be over here. It should be there. Yeah, that's how you might do it. But again, they don't think like you do. And so they're not putting it where you can get the most bang for the buck.
Right.
Obviously, these pipe bombs were not placed in the, and again, that just speaks to the fact that, yeah, they're not that bright, but they're motivated by radical Islam, and there's a lot of them here in this country.
It is Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, Radical Islam Why? When you've got de Blasio, the mayor of the largest city, then you've got Cuomo, the guy from the largest city, who's in denial with de Blasio. Either they're in denial or they think if they say it, everybody's just going to believe it. At some point, the American people will stop believing it. Then you've got our venerable leader come out, and he says this is extremism, and he says don't report anything until the agencies that are investigating this thing tell you what they know, because you really don't know anything. So he's telling the media what not to do now, just openly. Before, he just do it in the back room. Now he just says it openly in the media. Don't report anything yet, and they're listening. And he never once mentions anything about radical Islam, but he does say, for some reason, Jeff, and help me understand what's going through his head that makes him think this makes sense. For some reason, he looks at the people who are there, and he says, we've got ISIL, which he insists on saying ISIL. We've got ISIL on the run. We have weakened them. We've decimated them, as if we're supposed to say, oh, well, thank God. I mean, what we saw over the weekend proves what you're saying.
Yeah, that's just not true. I mean, we haven't decimated them. They're not on the run. They're very vibrant. We're killing bees around the beehive here and there. That's true, but they're far from on the run. In fact, they're expanding. I mean, they're in Libya. They're in countries all over the world now. They have direct contacts all over the place. So, no, they don't. They're not on the run at all.
It's Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott. The name of the book is Radical Islam Why. The one guy in New Jersey, his family owns a chicken restaurant. The guy in Minneapolis was a security guard for a shop in the mall, where he walked up to people and said, "Are you Muslim?" And if they said no, they got stabbed. But before, an undercover cop, or an off-duty cop, I should say, who's an NRA member, took out his gun and killed the guy. We don't know who they are, Jeff. It could be the guy selling you chicken. It could be the guy doing security guard work at the mall. What the hell are we supposed to do as free people?
Well, they do hide amongst us. I mean, and that's the part of the problem is if you dare say anything, you're accused of Islamophobia.
Right.
So we, they use our First Amendment against us. They use our freedom of speech against us. They use our freedom of religion against us. And if you dare say anything, you're a hater, et cetera, et cetera. So they're very keen on how to operate within our system. And then you hear some commentators say, well, he was just a disturbed young man. No, it's radical Islam. They always look for any excuse except for the religious excuse to explain the behavior, and that's what they go for first, instead of the most obvious red thread that connects all these people. So what are we to do? I mean, luckily the numbers are not that large,
right,
even though we've got 1,000 open cases, but they're growing, and my concern is that ISIS over there is going to strike us in a big, massive casualty attack.
It's Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, Radical Islam Why. The governor, the mayor, the president have all said, see something, say something. But you and I both know that's BS. They don't want us to see something and say something, because if we see something, and say something, what we're going to hear back is, oh, because they're Muslim? If we say, yeah, I see a woman walking through Times Square covered head to toe in a burqa, and she has religious freedom. I mean, this whole see something, say something is bunk. What can we legitimately do? I mean, if we see something, who do we tell that's not going to turn us away for political correctness?
Well, here in Texas, of course, we have very few gun-free zones. So
right,
if you're in a mall and you see something, you don't have to say something. You can take your self-defense in your own hands instead of, dying like or getting slashed
right,
and waiting for somebody else to protect you. So you've got to take your security into your own hands. You've got to be aware, situational awareness, and you look for behavior primarily, because they do hide in the Muslim communities. There's no question about it. But the vast majority of Muslims do not buy into this stuff. So it's a hard math problem, but we're big boys and girls. We can distinguish between the average Muslim in this country that has nothing to do with this and the radical Islamic extremists. But somehow our president doesn't think we have the the intelligence or the fair-mindedness to make that distinction.
Well, it's what's interesting is, I mean, I agree with you on all points, but I always have to go back to San Bernardino. In San Bernardino, the neighbors all saw strange activity through the middle of the night, and they were all the people going in and out were dressed in some traditional Muslim garb, and nobody thought it was weird that somebody was actively working in a garage, and we found that it was like the pipe bomb garage. That nobody thought there was a big deal that people were working in there making noise at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when the one neighbor, the woman, said, I almost called the police, but I didn't want them to think I was Islamophobic. Blows my mind, Jeff. Because because now we're being held captive by what we're told by the leaders that I've mentioned before and others.
Well, in the far left, free speech is based in their minds on consensus. Everybody has to agree to the same thing. And we're seeing this nonsense not only for Islamic terrorism, but, our own flag. The flag now stands for evil and tyranny. Therefore, if you dare to say anything good against the flag, you're a hater of your own. It's insane. The world we're living in, you and I wouldn't recognize this place 10 years ago. Like, what?
Yeah.
But we've got to do something to turn it around. There's no question about it.
It is Jeff Addicott, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, the professor from St. Mary's. He's the director of the Center for Terrorism Law at St. Mary's University. The book is Radical Islam Why, and I always tell you, you're the boss. You can do it right now. And generally speaking, we're talking about going out there and forgetting about the bees buzzing around. Just go ahead and get the hive now. Is there a reason why we're not dropping everything we're worth, everything we've got on Raqqa? On Aleppo, I mean, wherever the hell this is happening, wherever they know. Again, the intelligence knows way more than I know. You know more than I do because you still have your contacts. Why aren't we eradicating it where we know it is? What are we afraid of?
Well, I think, again, the mentality of people on the left is that we can negotiate our way out of anything. The North Koreans, the Iranians. It's not
working.
Yeah, no, it never does work, but they never learn. They cannot see, 3 inches beyond their own nose. But that's their premise. Well, man is basically good. We'll just negotiate with these people, and we don't want people to think that we are an imperial power and we're pushing our weight here and there, and we're all equal in the world. And shucks, we're not that great. We shouldn't, do this. And even some people think that we get what we deserve. So we have that type of leadership, and that's not America first.
It is Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott. Jeff, I don't know if you heard Hillary Clinton.
I did. Yeah.
She said it's Donald Trump's fault. And Donald Trump, he's to blame because he is empowering them because of his hate-filled rhetoric. And I'm giving you it in context, but paraphrased. His hate-filled rhetoric is somehow helping them recruit bad guys. Help me understand. Does she really believe that, or does she think that the people who are listening to her are dumb enough to believe it?
I think she'll say whatever she thinks will get her elected. Obviously, she's a consummate politician. Yeah. What really distressed me is when CNN edited out her first initial response when she said the bombings, and then they made her seem very reasonable when they just cut that word out. When Donald Trump said a bomb went off, oh my golly, they just piled on. How can you say that so quickly?
Right.
That's the type of world we're living in today, and thank goodness we have media, individuals like yourself that stand for the truth and put out the truth.
It is Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, Radical Islam Why. Last question or statement, but your thoughts on it certainly are welcome. Donald Trump said that this will make the Trojan horse look like nothing. What we're dealing with right now, if we continue to let people in without the ability to vet them, without the ability to understand where they're coming from or what the mindset is, or whether they love the country or not, then the Trojan horse will be no big deal as compared to what we're going to see. The Trojan horse, you see it coming, and once you learn what's inside, you stop it. What do we do about bringing people in from that part of the world? Do we stop it for now until we can figure it out?
Yeah, our own intelligence authorities and FBI says there's no way they can vet these people. Yeah. So until we can find a way to vet them, we can set up camps over there. Oh, by the way, we can help 10 times as many people with a safe zone over there than bringing them to this country, which costs us about $70,000 a pop, plus all the welfare that comes with that. So, yeah, if you really want to help people, set up safe zones over there. But until you can vet them, I don't care if they're coming from Timbuktu. Yeah. We've got to know who comes into our country. I'm always for a merit-based immigration policy. What can you do for us, not what can we do for you? Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. It's Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Addicott, Radical Islam Why. Make sure you go and grab the book. Jeff, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, there you go. Listen, he makes perfect sense every time. Your thoughts on that, 1-800-383-9624, joepags.com. Stay here.